In this video, I'm going to go over how to coat it in glue and think about what kind of color to add. This reed form is at least 75% covered. The project requirements are to cover the piece 100% down to 75%. So I do have a couple of open spaces, but the majority of the piece is covered in paper. This paper has not been treated in any way, and it's quite flexible and very fragile. By putting a coating of glue on it, it will tighten it up and make it very strong. I've decided to cover the entire piece in a coating of 50% glue, 50% water, with a little bit of watercolor added to tint as a base. At this point, I've let the piece dry. The first base coat is done. I could stop here, but I think I'm going to add a little bit more. Remember that it's going to look quite a bit different when it's wet versus when it's dry. I've decided to add a second layer of paper to this form right here. I've got a little bit of a rip, but I'm going to see if I can make this particular shape just a little bit darker and have a bit of contrast with the rest of the form. So I've added a wash of white glue, tinted with a little bit of watercolor, and I also have a soaked piece of red tissue paper here. I've added the extra layer of tissue paper and let that dry. I'm looking at this from all sides in the round and thinking about what else could I add. Looking at different shapes that are created here by the lines. I've played around with color. I've played around with actual texture. I'm going to go ahead and take text from this art magazine, rip it up and add it over the top of one particular area. I'm going to follow this line, which will create a strong contrast between this green shape over here and this other shape. But all I'm going to use is some glue, and then I'll put the magazine over the top of that, and then put another layer of white glue over the top. That's actually called decoupage, kind of like collage, but it's really just a term for adding a covering over the top of a three-dimensional object. Here's the finished product. I've allowed the glue to dry. There's some double tracing paper in this area. There's just some straight up watercolor and glue in other areas. And then I also added this decoupage ripped up text to give another added texture. So look at your piece in the round, spin it, take a look at it from different areas, experiment with color, experiment with textures. Don't be afraid to experiment and try different things.